Number 8. AMC Gremlin. American Motors launched the Gremlin on April 1, 1970. Whether the timing was deliberate, AMC's records never confirmed, but the car that appeared when the covers came off made the date feel appropriate. The Gremlin was the first American subcompact on the market, arriving before the Ford Pinto and Chevrolet Vega, which meant it set the standard for what American compact quality looked like in 1970. That was, on reflection, an unfortunate position to occupy. AMC equipped the Gremlin with vacuum-operated windshield wipers, a system that draws engine vacuum to function, and engine vacuum drops the moment the driver opens the throttle. In a rainstorm, at the exact moment the driver accelerated to maintain highway speed uphill, the Gremlin's wipers stopped. The decision was made because an electric wiper motor cost more. Total production reached 671,000 units across 8 years. The Gremlin is at number 8 not because it was dangerous or dishonest, but because it was a car that made decisions about basic driver function that its owners discovered incrementally in the rain, at speed, on hills. Number 7. AMC Pacer. American Motors designed the Pacer around a GM Wankel rotary engine, but GM canceled it at the last second. The problem? The Pacer's wide body, its massive weight, and its crazy 50% extra glass area, which earned it the nickname the Flying Fishbowl, were all engineered specifically for that missing engine. With no powertrain left, a panicked AMC shoved a heavy inline-six into a chassis that was never intended for it. The result was a car whose fundamental proportions, its width, its weight, and its greenhouse, had been determined by a powertrain that none of its buyers would ever see. The wide body became a daily parking problem on every American street designed for normal-width vehicles. The glass area created an interior that overheated consistently. The inline-six that replaced the rotary produced handling characteristics the suspension geometry had not been designed to manage. The Pacer peaked at approximately 145,000 units in its 1975 debut year and declined sharply as the ownership experience diverged from the styling promise. The Pacer is at number 7 because every buyer absorbed the consequences of a powertrain substitution AMC made under conditions the window sticker did not disclose. Number 6. Chrysler Cordova. Ricardo Montalban looked directly into the camera and described the Chrysler Cordova's interior as featuring rich Corinthian leather. The phrase became one of the most effective automotive advertising lines of the decade. It was also entirely invented. Corinthian leather was not a recognized category of leather with a geographic origin, a tanning standard, or a hide specification. It was a phrase Chrysler's advertising department had created to describe standard upholstery in terms that would suggest something it was not. The Cordova itself was a B-body personal luxury coupe that competed against the Chevrolet Monte Carlo and Ford Thunderbird at a price that positioned it as a near-luxury vehicle. Its standard 318 cubic inch V8 delivered outputs that the car's proportions implied but did not support. The vinyl Landau roof and opera windows communicated aspiration that the engineering specification declined to validate. The Cordova is at number 6 because it built its sales record on the specific distance between what its advertising described and what its engineering delivered, a distance that its buyers closed after the purchase agreement had been signed.
Number 5. Ford Mustang II. Ford built the Mustang II on the Pinto platform, reduced the base engine to a 88-horsepower four-cylinder, and applied to the result the nameplate that had defined American performance for the previous decade. In 1974, 385,993 Americans bought one, the strongest Mustang sales year since the original launch. The oil crisis had made fuel economy the only argument that mattered, and Ford had read the market correctly. The timing was commercially impeccable. What was not commercially impeccable was the gap between the nameplate's history and the car that carried it. The Mustang that Carroll Shelby had tested past 140 miles per hour in 1964 now produced its maximum power at 4,800 RPM in a configuration weighing 2,620 pounds. Period reviewers from Car and Driver and Road and Track documented the four-cylinder's output with a restraint that implied the number, 88 horsepower, required no additional editorial comment. The Mustang II is at number 5 because it demonstrated that a nameplate with enough cultural momentum could survive being applied to a car that contradicted everything the nameplate had previously represented, provided the oil crisis arrived at the right moment. Number 4. Lincoln Versailles. Ford built the Lincoln Versailles on the old, outdated Falcon-derived platform shared with the Ford Granada and Mercury Monarch, applied individual paint to the body panels, installed a slightly stronger version of the Granada's engine, added a padded vinyl roof and Continental kit, and priced the result at approximately $12,000, within range of a Cadillac Seville and roughly triple the cost of the Granada it came from. The engineering beneath the Lincoln badges was Granada engineering. The interior quality Lincoln buyers expected at $12,000 was present in materials but absent in the underlying architecture. Today, the only part of a Versailles worth anything is its 9-inch rear axle with factory disc brakes, which hot rodders actively seek out in junkyards, arguably the most honest assessment the car has ever received. The Versailles is at number 4 because Ford charged Lincoln buyers 3 times the price of the Granada it was built from, called the difference a Lincoln, and let the press explain that arithmetic to the buyers who had already signed. But while Ford was ripping off luxury buyers with a glorified Granada, Chevrolet was about to torture mechanics with number 3. Number 3. Chevrolet Monza. The Chevrolet Monza arrived in 1975 as a platform mate to the Vega, a sleeker hatchback coupe built on the same H-body that the Vega's record had already thoroughly compromised. It inherited the Vega's documented rust timeline, its structural vulnerabilities, and the general reputation that accompanied a platform whose development had been rushed to market. What it contributed was a category of mechanical suffering entirely of its own. The optional V8 configurations, the 262 and the California spec 305 cubic inch engines that GM offered to buyers who wanted actual performance, were installed in a bay designed around a 4-cylinder. To replace the rear spark plugs on a V8-equipped Monza, mechanics had to unbolt the engine mount and lift the entire engine block with a floor jack. A service procedure that should have taken 20 minutes became a 2-hour operation that most independent shops invoiced accordingly. GM's engineers had identified the access problem before production began. The Monza is at number 3 because it managed to make ownership worse than the car it was built beside, in the one direction the Vega had not yet explored.
Number 2. Chevrolet Vega. General Motors built the Vega in approximately 30 months, roughly half the development time the platform required, because Volkswagen was taking compact car market share and the Ford Pinto was scheduled to arrive first. GM even devised a special railroad system called the Vertipack that shipped Vegas vertically, nose down, in dedicated rail cars, an engineering ingenuity that the engine itself never matched. Motor Trend awarded the Vega its Car of the Year for 1971. The sleeveless aluminum cylinder block, paired with a heavy iron head, expanded at different rates under heat. Head gaskets failed, cylinder bores warped, body panels dissolved. GM issued 8 major recall campaigns across the Vega's 7-year run. None resolved the fundamental problem because the engine had been validated on a timeline that did not permit the operating conditions it would encounter. Production fell from 292,531 in 1971 to 78,402 in 1977. The Vega is at number 2 because 2 million Americans bought one, and most discovered, at their own expense, what General Motors engineers had documented before the first one left the factory. Number 1. Ford Pinto. Ford's internal cost-benefit analysis, submitted as evidence in the Grimshaw versus Ford Motor Company litigation, showed that the company's engineers had identified the fuel tank's vulnerability to rupture and ignition in certain rear impact scenarios.
The document calculated the cost of an $11 per vehicle modification against the projected settlement cost of the burn injuries the existing design would produce. Ford's accountants chose the litigation option. In 1974, the oil crisis drove 400,000 Americans to choose the Pinto as the most affordable domestic subcompact on the market. None of them had read the analysis. The Grimshaw case produced a punitive damages award, a document record, and the Pinto's permanent position as the most cited vehicle in American product liability law. The Pinto is at number 1, not because it was the least reliable car of the 1970s, the Vega holds that record, but because no other car in American history has produced a more precisely documented account of the gap between what a manufacturer knew and what it chose to tell the people who bought its product.